I'm really excited to be able to finally say this at last, but this is my spoiler-free review of Avengers Infinity War. That's right, Marvel Studios has released the epic blockbuster of monumental proportions that is their 10-year milestone of a film, Avengers Infinity War. That is so exciting just as a concept, let alone the film itself. And by the way, just so I don't go completely mad going, this bit was great, then this bit was great, and oh my god, I loved it when they did that, and holy moly, Thanos is freaking scary, which he is. Thanos is really freaking scary in a great way. He's just, he's great. I do just want to say I'm going to do this review kind of as a recommendation to keep it spoiler-free. I can't really go too in-depth. So I guess treat this as a recommendation, just pointing out some highlights that I really liked and maybe some things you should keep an eye out for or take note of going in. And yeah, seriously, go check it out so that you can come back later on and you can watch my spoiler-filled one, which I'm going to be honest, I'm going to have to watch it again before I do that because there is a lot going on in this movie. So much great stuff, the best of which I'm going to talk about now. So the first thing I want to touch upon is that I have nothing but respect and admiration for the Russo Brothers because I think that The Winter Soldier is just one of the most perfect films I've ever seen, just so well made, and it's just so intricately plotted, and I think Civil War lives up to that mostly. There are a lot more characters in that, so sometimes it gets a little bit foggy about who's doing what or why they're doing it, etc., etc. But still a good film. And there are concerns, and there were certainly, even from me, who's got nothing but respect for those guys and a lot of love for Marvel. I just adore Marvel, and the MCU is one of my favorite things in existence. It's really creatively inspiring to me. I think the stories are great. I think the actors are just phenomenal, but I was worried that they could just be too many. It is really an ambitious feat. And I know there are memes of people saying, oh, well, this is more ambitious, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's fun. But it's true. What Marvel was saying is true. This is a very ambitious film. And did it work? I think it did. I can't necessarily go into detail as to why, but I thought the way they handled it was really clever. This has been said by the Russo brothers, so this isn't necessarily a spoiler, but this is mainly Thanos' film. It's his first major film. He's had cameos and moments where he turns to the camera and smiles and whatnot. Although I gave him a British accent, then whatever. You know, he has his dramatic moments, and if you want something done, you do it yourself, and he gets the gauntlet out and all that sort of stuff, which is fine and cool, but he's never really had a proper movie. This is his movie. Really good. And it makes him one of the best villains we've seen in the MCU. I'm not going to say the best because I still really like Loki and stuff like that, but he's been around a while, so Thanos is fresh. He's really good, and Killmonger was really good too, and he's quite fresh because he's just the film before this one. But it's a really good setup, and it makes the story make sense that it is his goal to get the stones, and we follow a lot of that. It's not just about him, though. It's got these huge casts, two groups that we've been wanting to see come together for a long time, and we're not let down. It is great to see the two Sherlocks of the world together, you know, Benedict Cumberbatch and Robert Downey Jr., and I will just clarify, because I'm sure this being the internet, someone will say, Sherlock Holmes has been around much longer than that. There have been other actors, but I meant more modern ones. And it's great to see Iron Man and Star-Lord. It's great to have the Guardians interact with a whole lot of different people. I'm not going to give away who meets up with who, because it does give away some points of the plot, but nevertheless, the character interactions is what this whole film is about for a lot of us, especially me. And it just works. It is fantastic. It is really, really cool. The music is something I want to mention. I'm obsessed with film scores, especially the Avengers theme, and the man who wrote that for the first Avenger movie is back, Alan Silvestri. I'm sure you've heard of him, he's been around. And he does versions of it throughout the film, and he does a lot of little themes, just very subtle ones that he wrote into the first one. Really fun stuff to have him back. It just adds a sense of continuity to the Avengers films, something that the MCU in some ways has lacked. I do feel that they should bring back composers more, or the themes, you know, have different composers write the same themes, because Danny Elfman did a version of the theme that I just said that I love in Age of Ultron, and I love that one too. I just like the notes, but it was played around with and had more of a Danny Elfman feel. So I would like to see more of what we got here, which is a return of a composer writing the same theme or different versions of it. We have had people return like Taylor Bates and Brian Taylor, or is it Tyler? Tyler. I'm getting confused because their names are similar. Anyway, we've had composers come back, like, Taylor Bates did the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and Brian Tyler did Thor: The Dark World and Iron Man 3, and he worked with Danny Elfman on Age of Ultron. See, this is where a lot of my knowledge is. But it was really cool to have Alan Silvestri come back. So I've talked about the characters and how great they are, but I just want to quickly talk about the cast, who are phenomenal. Over the past 10 years, Marvel has assembled casts that work well as their own ensembles in their own standalone films, but they also work as the big collective that they are now. It is just brilliant to see. Some of the highlights being Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange. I thought that he was much more at home in the role. That's not to say anything against him in Doctor Strange or Thor. He just felt like he was much more confident. The character also felt more confident with the spells, and when he was the one explaining things that was going on, he felt really at home, which gave just a strength to Benedict's performance. And obviously that's probably a choice, because in his own film he didn't know what the hell was going on, and now he does, and he's the Sorcerer Supreme and he's explaining, so that was really good. Tom Holland is just born to play Spider-Man, and this is one of the best examples of that. His film Homecoming is so good and he is great in it, but he steals the scenes in a lot of ways in the ones that he's in. He's really, really good. Robert Downey Jr., suffice to say, he is Tony Stark. He is just brilliant, and this is no exception. In fact, on that note, I think the regulars, Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, basically the original lineup of the Avengers, are all great, and it's become tradition to see them in Avengers films. Obviously, they kind of cross over in the standalone ones as well. You had Natasha Romanoff appearing in the second and third Captain America movies and things like that. But the Avengers movies, they all come together, and that's the team. That is the original lineup, and they're all still there, and it's really, really cool to see that. And the actors, it's just great to see them in these roles that we're familiar with and they're familiar with. It's just weirdly comforting. And they're also really good at what they do. Moving on, one of my favorite performances of the entire movie is Zoe Saldana's. I adore that woman. She's just an incredible example of how to be a generous, caring, kind person, as well as being a really hard-working person at your profession, and a great mother who, I don't know how she balances it all. Like, she's got 3 kids. She stars in huge franchises, Star Trek, Marvel, Avatar, and she maintains just a really pleasant nature, and it's really commendable, and metaphorical hats off to you. This was her best performance as Gamora. Really powerful stuff, and sticking with a theme of really powerful performances, and one of the best performances I've seen in a long time from this person, who I also love, is Karen Gillan as Nebula. Karen Gillan just loses herself in this role in any of the films that we've seen her in. She's just so good. It was a bit weird for me hearing her with an American accent in the first Guardians, just because I'd seen her as Amy Pond in Doctor Who, and she was one of my favourite characters in all of Doctor Who, but she had her natural Scottish accent, and so it was kind of weird hearing the American, but I'm used to it now, and she is so good at it. And she's so committed. For the first one, she shaved. I don't think she does that anymore. I think they put a bowl cap on, but that commitment is just wonderful to see in an actor. And this movie is no exception. She is brilliant. Now, having mentioned her and her fictional sister, I need to mention their fictional father.
Thanos.
I said it before, this is his movie, and boy oh boy is his storyline great. He is great, the writing for him is great, and Josh Brolin is superb. Russo Brothers said they wanted to make him scary like a modern day Darth Vader, and honestly, I think they succeeded. I mean, I wasn't necessarily scared, but I imagine my 7-year-old self watching Star Wars for the first time and seeing Darth Vader walk down the hallway on the Corvette when he'd taken it into the Star Destroyer at the beginning of A New Hope, and he walked out. I was always terrified. Big black cape and that breathing, and his soldiers who've just mercilessly killed people. He's ordered them to do that. It all adds up to being really scared as a 7-year-old. I'm sure kids watching this would have been scared. Although I do take to task anyone who lets their kids watch this at too young an age. There is a rating system, guys. Let's remember that. That's just my point of view. Kids do love this stuff anyway. but it is a mature film. But on that note, that's who they were trying to sell it to, the younger audiences. They were trying to make him scary. I wasn't necessarily scared, like I said, but he has a menace to him. Part of that is down to Alan Silvestri's score, which in some scenes is relentless, as is the Titan himself. The great thing about this movie, though, and about him and his story, is that he's not only relentless and menacing and all of those big, impressive, nasty stuff. He's got a story you can really understand, and his motivation is really interesting, and I can't mention it, otherwise it will really spoil things. But it is really, really clever. I'm not necessarily going to say care for him, but I wonder if that's just because we've seen everyone else for 10 years and this is his first major movie and he's the villain, so we don't really care for him. I don't know. That could be the case, but I don't know. I didn't necessarily care, so to speak, about him and for his plight or anything like that, but it's really, really interesting. It's really clever to add that. He's certainly no Malekith, whatever his name is from Thor the Dark World. Unfortunately, because I adore Christopher Eccleston, he's a superb actor, he was basically just playing a faceless villain intent on destroying things just for the sake of it. This is not that way at all. This story, Thanos as a character, really very different than that. So, I've mentioned the music, I've mentioned the cast. The effects look great, especially Thanos. Thanos looks really good, and I don't know how much of it was Josh Brolin wearing prosthetics and how much was CGI, but also it doesn't really matter because the voice he's chosen is so impressive. It could have just been voice acting and they could have gone entirely CGI and I wouldn't care. It adds a lot of character to him, it adds the menace. It's just really good. The execution of him, the execution of the entire film is really good. I do recommend you check it out. My neighbours are playing video games and they've been quite loud because they've got the front door open and you can hear them. But back to this. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the movie's really good. Check it out, guys. You probably were going to already, seeing as it's one of the biggest achievements in cinema, especially modern cinema. So you're probably going to see it anyway. But I do recommend that you do. I'd love it if you were to hit subscribe, hit like, and then come back when I have a spoiler-filled one after I've seen it again, because there is a lot going on here. A lot of really good stuff, but a lot. And that does make me worry that it might be a 7-hour-long review. But anyway, probably won't be, but we'll see. But yeah, hit subscribe, come back later on. Tell me what you thought about the film, very vaguely, so let's not spoil it for everyone else. Because remember, hashtag Thanos demands your silence. That's a very terrible voice. But anyway, that's a little hashtag going around from the Russo Brothers. And I really want to respect that. I've tried not to spoil anyone. And I would very much appreciate it if you did. Please note, if you try to spoil someone, the comments will be removed completely and I will badmouth you afterwards. I'm serious, don't ruin things for people. It's a special thing. It's a milestone. People put a lot of time and energy into this, making it and watching it. If you were to spoil it, I wouldn't appreciate that and people wouldn't appreciate that. On a much lighter note, just tell me what you thought about the movie, and then on my next video, which will be the spoiler-filled one, we can have a bit of a discussion about it in the comments. So hit subscribe, hit like, and I'll see you around for the next video, which for me, I'll record later on after I've seen it again, but for you, it'll just come around like